Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Today I'm getting to you a little bit later than I normally do here because I got to spend the day over in Ames, Iowa. And on my way home, I made sure to take Highway 30, which runs between Ames and Cedar Rapids, just to once again see the damage from the 2020 derecho. And if you've not been to this part of the country and seen what that derecho did, there is still a tremendous amount of tree damage in this area. Well, this whole area was very much in the warm sector today of the big cyclone that's coming out of the southern plains. And of course, that's where all the action is right now in terms of severe weather here and into the lower Mississippi River Valley. Interestingly enough, though, we were watching the same area the day before on Sunday as we saw all of the very strong southerly winds which have set up this next system carry a lot of wildfire smoke and spread those fires out of the south toward the north. We even saw significant, dust here, over in this part of Texas, all being pulled north on some strong winds. Well, as of today, we've now seen this blow up into a pretty large complex of storms. I'll just take you back here to see there were actually multiple triggers over here in eastern Texas and Oklahoma throughout the day today. A very complex setup, but it was the back line, this one right in through here, that was really ripping through, producing very large hail and also multiple tornadoes. And just before the sun sets, you can actually see behind it, there is quite a bit of dust in the air as the stronger winds wrap around this. Now, this is very preliminary as of late in the evening here on Monday, but according to the Storm Prediction Center, there have already been 59 reports of severe weather, including 18 reports of hail, 28 reports, of strong straight-line winds, and 13 reports of tornadoes. And in addition to all of this, again, this is very preliminary. This is going to fill in overnight and tomorrow with quite a few more dots here representing this severe weather. But just keeping an eye on the lightning out of this has been quite impressive as well. Just here in the last hour, we're counting up something in the order of about 20,000 lightning strikes in this general vicinity, and these storms continue to pop. Now, I was watching a lot today just on Twitter as I got home to see what some of the damage has looked like, just a good first glance at it. And I just want to take you to a great guy, Brian Empfinger, great follow. He chases with a drone, and he caught some incredible footage today of one of those tornadoes. And just amazing. This is going to reset. There it is. And I thought I would just make sure that you all know about his work and what he does, because it's some incredible work here that he puts out. And just amazing that he's able to capture such video. The problem has been, though, that these tornadoes have really ripped through and caused a lot of damage tonight in eastern Texas. And this is just the first day of a 3-day severe weather event that the Storm Prediction Center, our forecasting, the forecast models have picked up. In fact, some of them saw this about 10 days in advance. And that's important for you to remember for the analysis I'm going to do here in just a few moments. So what do we have on our all hazards weather map this evening? Well, on the leading edge of this, we still have a large area of tornado watch surrounded by flood watches. There are actually, while I'm recording, tornado warnings out with this system. I'm not going to dig into those because many of you are going to watch this tomorrow when they've already settled. But on the back side, this is all blizzard warning right in through here. So again, inside of a week, we've now had 2 blizzard warnings in central Kansas on very narrowly focused regions. This is a pretty potent system moving across the country. Now, on radar, since late this afternoon, you can see the broad shield of precipitation that's spreading north and northeast. And we'll talk about the severe weather first, but this precipitation is absolutely critical given the drought situation here. We're going to talk about that in just a few seconds. But the Storm Prediction Center still yet tonight has upgraded this area, did it earlier this afternoon, but upgraded this area to a moderate risk. And we're going to carry that moderate risk over tomorrow into parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. The severe storm type is all 3 types. So potential for large hail, damaging straight line winds, and tornadoes once again as this comes through. And I'll show you the timing of that in just a few seconds here. All right, by the time we get out into Wednesday, the severe storm threat then moves over here from the southeast up to parts of the mid-Atlantic. To see total precipitation out of this is the high-res NAM 18C forecast. And what I want to draw your attention to is kind of the back edge of where this is. Because there's a significant portion of Nebraska, the Dakotas, back to Montana, southern Saskatchewan, and Alberta that desperately need this precipitation, yet much of it is just too far to the east, given how deeply this trough dug down here to parts of New Mexico before ejecting in the panhandles. It's going to be moving slowly here through the Midwest, but it's this back edge that's so sharply defined on who's getting the precipitation and who is not. On the leading edge out here, we could have several locations into here that pick up anywhere between 2 and possibly some areas upwards of 6 inches of total precipitation. And as we mentioned, there is snow being blown around by some strong winds on the backside, So from the 18Z run, this is where we're currently projecting the snow to be falling from that system as it traverses a bit far to the north and east, and it meets up with an Alberta clipper that's going to curl into it as it runs across the Great Lakes. So two systems kind of working in tandem here. Now, when I think about all of this, before we get into the model runs, it just draws my attention to the bigger picture of what this system's doing as we head fully into our planting time period. We'll get a new update of this on Thursday, of course, but this was the latest drought monitor. And some of that precipitation that you just saw is falling over some of the driest regions on our drought monitor. It is also missing several of the dry regions as well. Now, thinking about all of that and just thinking about what's happened so far this year, where California, Oregon, and Nevada, Arizona have missed out on any sense of subtropical jet stream flow. Hence, they're having the driest start to any year since 1893. We've seen too many systems curl through the Rockies and eject into the Mid-South, avoiding this part of the western Corn Belt and northern plains. And Texas continues to remain extremely dry. We've made up this area, and we're going to add more into this area, which is going to completely eliminate the drought. But the big question I'm thinking about here is, we're getting through March. We're now past the equinox. How does this transition into spring, and what are the dominant factors going to be? So let's do the long range, and then we'll come back to that near range forecast again. I think so much of this has to do with the momentum transfer that's coming out of the tropics. I say that a lot, but what I'm referring to here is the interplay between the La Niña, which is really just the shifting around of the trade winds, and then the MJO. Now we're finishing up, can you see it right here? We're finishing up a time period where over the last almost 20 days, we've seen extremely strong trade winds in this direction. And then what happens is for a little while, we just lose the signal a bit. What I am curious about is as we finish March, which goes through here, and then start April, do we see a resurgence of this La Niña behavior once more? Now let me show you what would have to happen in order for that to occur. Let's continue this narrative about the MJO. Some of the latest forecasts, again, we brought it out earlier in the month into phase 2. It's passed over into phase 3. It's forecast to come through phase 4 in the next few days. And then like we've been discussing in this, so this is a good forecast verification for me. It is now forecast to fully collapse back into null space. So instead of doing this, which would really change the pattern substantially, especially for the plains in California, it now appears that it's going to crash into null space. Now listen, if it pops out over here, phase 7, phase 1, this would be great news for many on the West Coast and also those that are in the southern plains. This would break down the nose of those strong trade winds that have for so long just controlled where the MJO position is. If it does come curling back around and back out in the Indian Ocean and makes another loop here, this whole pattern, as we discussed in the last couple of videos, is going to go on wash, rinse, repeat. Now, if we look at this carefully, the newest model runs are hung up on that. In other words, they're not. The ECMWF weeklies, we look at these every Monday night and Thursday night, right? They are not allowing the MJO to break out. They have a weak signal. They're not picking up on that. So what they did in the newest run, and you're looking at the April precipitation anomalies, is it looks almost identical to the previous run. I'll just go back and show it to you. That was the previous run. It's just a little drier in the northern tier of the U.S. And even if you go back a run before that, same scenario. So the newest run right here, again, this is just going out through the end of April. If I've seen any difference, it's primarily here with a return more toward normal precip rather than being wetter than average. But the models refuse to really break the MJO out, change the signal in the jet stream pattern to return moisture from California to the southwest and to the southern plains. They're hung up on persistence. And I get it. I know why they are. Because if you look at just the tropical dynamics, we've just seen strong trade winds as of late. They've pushed here. This La Niña had this second resurgence in the month of March. And it's just pushed the MJO here and prevented its eastward progression from getting out into phases 6, 7, and 8, and 1. So the question is, if this continues to push or comes back, do we reset the MJO back into phase 3 and have it go through 4 into 5 again? That is a possible scenario. What I need to be watching and reporting to you is to see if those trade winds, instead of coming back through and strengthening again, if they finally start to fade. Now, speaking of fading trade winds, I want to show you just another way that we're forecasting the behavior of this La Niña. We've been talking a lot about it. So I'm going to take you actually to a website put together by the Bureau of Meteorology. This is out of Australia. And what you're looking at here is we're going to look at the forecast each month, April through August, of what's going on with ENSO, or La Niña currently. But we're going to look at the forecast from BOM, that would be the Bureau of Meteorology, CANSIPS, that's a Canadian model, ECMWF, European, JMA, that's Japanese, Meteo France, NOAA, UK Met Office. We're looking at all these different forecasting centers. And what you see is that they're keeping through April the weak La Niña. By May, every single group starts to fade, and in June, the only outlier that sticks around is NOAA, keeping this firmly into La Niña territory. By summertime, most of the modeling agencies collapsed the La Niña back into neutral territory. But even out until August, the latest forecast from NOAA, which we talked about last time, continues to keep that La Niña in place. And I'm getting concerned about this. Why is NOAA such an outlier with all of this? And what does that mean? And will it really happen that we continue to see these colder waters? Because as of late, look at the warm water that showed up over here. So we got to watch all of this progress very carefully. And you know the reason why. Whenever we have a La Niña in place here, it increases risk east of the Rocky Mountains in terms of drought. That's the main culprit, the main thing we're going to be looking for here as we progress forward. We know that if these waters remain cold, that also increases the risk of drought in the central United States. So there's several reasons why we need to assess this. Now, what I want to next show you is a website that comes from the government. It's the CPC website, cpc.insep.noaa.gov. And when you go here, it'll take you to the top of the page. It looks like Climate Prediction Center, but it's got a whole lot of different things you can look at here. Now, what I want to focus on is they released at the end of last week their new monthly outlook for April. This is the temperature side of it, and that is the precip. Now, what we need to do is we need to look at this and compare it to the European model. You'd say, well, they look pretty darn close, right? That's the European model forecast. Here's CPC's. It's this temperature forecast I'm getting a bit leery about, and I'll show you what I'm talking about in a few moments. But on the same site, you can go out and look at the longer range, like the 3-month outlooks. They just released these at the end of last week. April, May, and June are now forecast here. And I'll show you in a few seconds where you can go to get the longer range. But I do want you to use this page to look at the seasonal drought outlook maps, which are shown right down here as well, which come from NOAA and the U.S. Drought Monitor. And this is just a very concerning picture going forward because it seems as though everything the CPC is doing is really hung up on persistence. Let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. You can come over here and click on the interactive map if you'd like. That's a great tool, but I'd rather have you right now click on this one, the 3-month outlook. You'll be taken to this page. And I want to show you out there June, July, and August. And I want to look first at the temperature patterns that are being predicted for this summer. Now what you notice is the greatest chances of being well above average are actually now tucked away in the mountains. Still, much of the country is looking at an above average temperature pattern. But it seems to be that it's here, which makes me wonder if that ridge, if this verifies, will actually set up a bit farther to the west. Now thinking about that, I'm going to go right over here and click on the precipitation link. And what it's going to show me is June, July, and August precipitation map. And what I see here is that it's trying to anchor a high pressure cell somewhere in this vicinity and has the flow coming around like this. And that would explain why they're so very dry from Montana through the plains and into the midsection of the country. Now I could make an argument here that what's going on in the models is they're very much hung up on persistence from when they were initialized. Because if you kind of look at this area, this is the region, I think I've got that map, where did I put it? Right here, that has been so deep into drought so far this year. And it's also been in the west. But remember, it's not going to show up dry in the west because it's already dry in the west. They have a Mediterranean climate. It would make sense, though, everything kind of comes together here. If you do have a ridge, that you'd also get a lot of southwest monsoonal flow coming into Arizona again this year. But what I would like to tell you is that even though it looks as though drought is going to anchor west of the Mississippi River in the midsection of the country, much of what you see here seems to be that the models are more hung up on persistence and not change. And where I think that change might happen first is in this map. And if we see those trade winds completely backing off, it's going to unlock the MJO, and that will start to give us a transition in the jet stream, and it'll shift all of these long-range forecasts around. So that's where we're going to continue to observe it. So I want you to make sure that you're checking out using that resource. Now, we're going to go back to a multi-model analysis again here. And I'm going to start off by just showing you the performance, because as of late, over the last few days, both the European and the GFS have tanked. They've both come off of their highs, and neither's performing very well. And in a rare move for me, I'm going to prefer the GFS solution I'm about to show you. And it's because later on this week, I got to keep an eye on this deep wave that's going to come off of Japan. You see, it's going to follow the open flow that you see here, the unblocked flow of the Pacific jet stream. If there is a block, it's over Alaska. See this high pressure cell here over the low? There may be a block pretty far to the north, but not much hindering the flow of the jet stream across the open Pacific. And this is going to be the next wave I need to keep an eye on. Now remember, in the meantime, we still have the big system coming through, but in a rare move for me, I like the GFS solution with this. So I'm going to show you both, but we're going to look at them one at a time. The 18Z GFS is what we're going to see first. So this is the first system that rolls through. So we know that tomorrow our severe weather risk, of course, on Tuesday is going to be down here in the lower Mississippi River Valley, but we're going to be spreading quite a bit of rain here through the midsection of the country. There'll be snow on the northern side of this. This whole system then curls up over the eastern Great Lakes, drags a front by Wednesday into Thursday across the southeast, and exits through New England. Now behind it, there's a little weak clipper that comes around on the back side. You can see it here delivering another shot at precipitation, but you'll see in a few moments we got some colder air coming in. Now the midsection of the country gets a break through the weekend. There will be some light snow that comes into New England, but overall a bit of a break through Saturday into Sunday, possibly a weak little shot that comes in like this. That would be on Sunday night. But what I think the European model is missing and the GFS is getting right is this feature here. Because the wave that's coming off of Japan right now has quite a bit of amplitude to it, and I think that that's going to carry that forward, and the European model is flattening it out. And I just think that might be an incorrect solution. Now, of course, this would be great. It would deliver a lot of precipitation to California next Monday, a week from now, and then that system would come over the mountains and then basically show up as another large Central Plains weather system by the end of the month on the 30th. And what I want to show you is how the European model is handling this, and then I'll show you how the European ensemble is handling it. So I was just looking at this a few moments ago, so let's just take a look at the European model solution. So this is through tomorrow. So there's the severe weather event, right here. We're expecting in the lower Mississippi River Valley. That low then curls up into New England like we talked about. The front clears the coast by Thursday. Okay, there's the little clipper that comes on the backside, both same kind of timing in both models, and then the high pressure comes in, and all we're going to watch on Sunday, see it again right in through here, could be a little system that comes through the northern plains, upper Midwest, and sneaks in through early Monday morning, clipping the eastern Great Lakes. Now, as we get out there into next week, this is the system I'm talking about. Do you notice how the European model has a much more open and less well-defined wave? That's the difference. So it then comes into California, sure, it delivers some precipitation, but when it gets over the Rockies, the European model does not let it out as a big low. It's got too high of atmospheric pressure to the north. But you do notice one thing, that unblocked open flow is bringing moisture to the west. We're delivering it to the Central Plains. And we need about 4 of the types of storm systems we're seeing today, just without the severe weather would be nice, but 4 of those to come through and knock this drought out. Now you've seen both models. I'd like to now show you why I think the ensemble is picking up on it. You see, here's next Monday into Tuesday. That's the time frame we're talking about. And the European model keeps a series of waves coming through. This is the one that we really need to keep a close eye on, because as it comes sweeping through on the 30th and 31st, and then following it on the very beginning of the month of April, we've got multiple troughs that are coming through. And if you look, this is what I'd like to show you. Tuesday the 29th, the ensemble average sea level pressure anomalies are resolving a low that's deepening in this area. So the operational run wasn't real well defined on it, but the ensemble run is showing it. So what I'm trying to tell you is we got the big system going through now. There'll be a little bit of a break in the midsection of the country. Temperatures are going to drop off. We're then going to see systems rolling into the northwest, and then next Monday we're going to watch here for a system to come through on Tuesday. So it's about 1 a week, which is what we really need to kind of dial up to beat this drought back. Okay, do the models agree with that? Well, first of all, I guess we should look at the European. And we'll go to the 7-day precipitation anomaly and go out there fully into week 2. You can see in this area that it is no longer showing a dry signal. That's important. In fact, let's get the 12Z run. Sorry about that. There you go. Now you see the system coming into the west, and it's going to pull through this area. And again, this is too dry. The previous run, I think, had it right. The GFS, I think, is the better solution. Do you see how it's bringing the precip into California? See the above average in the Sierra Nevada coming over the mountains, possibly showing up here as a deeper low? That is what I think is going to occur with this system coming in next week. So let's watch it carefully. Unfortunately, it's going to deliver a whole lot more rain to places that don't need it, but deliver some to places that do. Okay, from there, on the temperature side of it, I love this map. Shows you in gray places we expect over the next week to have a temperature at or below freezing. We're going to be talking about frost in every one of our videos from now for the next few weeks. What are the high temperatures going to do? Well, I was just looking at it. Let's go back here. There's Monday's highs. We already saw these. Tuesday, you can see the cold coming in behind that system into Texas, New Mexico, and the southern plains. Wednesday, getting into Thursday. So the heat builds back in the west as the first system slowly moves into New England. It's going to take a few days to get there. Now we get a bit of a rebound Friday into Saturday in parts of the plains. But remember, there's that second little shortwave that comes sneaking in on the backside. That's the little clipper. Hence, this region stays cooler than average. The heat really builds in the west, though. That's where we get to on Sunday. Now, the day 5 through 10 time period, you can see what's setting up ahead of that next system coming into California. There's a lot of warmth in place here. This is primarily this weekend, getting into early next week. But when we get out there day 10 through 15, now we start to see some hint about some cooler air possibly showing up in April. Now, to think about that, this is where I'll finish. I'm going to take you out there to mid-April and show you what the European ensemble is doing. It likes keeping kind of a 3-wave system here. There's a trough coming out of the Bering Sea, one that kind of curls around the Great Lakes and the Hudson Bay, and another one here in the North Atlantic. And if it does stay like this, we need to ask what that's going to do to the temperatures. Now, there's some good reason for that. The European takes the MJO in here and just kind of swirls it around, but leaves it in some sense of an area in through this region. And if it did that, we'd call that phase 6, and that favors troughs in those areas. See that? So if that's the case, you might say that the behavior of the jet stream would respond. And what I'm noticing here is that in the Arctic oscillation, we see a dip down into negative ground here with the control run once we get out there into that first and second week of April. And it's also there in the North Atlantic oscillation. So it comes up positive and then possibly drops down negative again. And these are both signals for cooler conditions along the East Coast. So when I show you the model runs, this is this next 7 days. Well, as we play it forward into the first full week of April, going into the second week of April, when that NAO goes negative again, we could just start to see cooler weather showing back up here. I don't anticipate like a 2018 type of cold April, but it's something that I think we need to be watching quite carefully. Now, I told you earlier I was going to bring this up with the CPC forecast, because they want this to be what April looks like. And I think we're going to see some more cooler air sliding through mid-April into this area. Could that give us a later frost? Possibly in some locations, but we'll just need to see how cold it is. It's hard to tell at this particular point. Last thing I'd like to do for you, now that we've covered temperature, is just to give you a quick update on South America. This is going to be a 1-week sliding window of precipitation anomalies. We've been a bit drier here in the north, and we're going to stay that way for the next few days. This is not dry enough, though, to have a really negative impact on the safrinha crop that's grown here. We've seen now for several weeks above average precipitation from Argentina to Paraguay, Uruguay, and southern Brazil, and more is on the way. As we play it forward, going out here fully into week 2, what we start to see is that the models really start to lose the stronger signal and return mostly normal precipitation going forward. So much of the behavior, what will happen here is if the MJO keeps curling around phase 2, 3, 4, and 5. Should it do that, we might see some drier risks here later. But just as a reminder, the monsoon starts to run out at the end of April anyway. So we're going to be watching for these precipitation patterns to start to shift around as this second or safrinha crop goes through the end of its its vegetative stages and gets into the reproductive stages. So we'll watch it, report back any sort of issues we'll be having with this crop, and I'll talk to you again on Thursday. Thanks.